From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
One day and counting as the conclave begins tomorrow. Catholic cardinals get international attention as the world wonders who will be the next pope. Meanwhile, oaths of secrecy signed in the Pauline Chapel at the Vatican. Everyone involved in the conclave, from the electors to the Swiss Guard. And even the elevator operators make a solemn promise to remain silent about the proceedings. And in a poignant traditional ceremony, the ring of Pope Francis, the ring that bore his papal seal, is destroyed today in the Vatican, marked in such a way that it cannot be used as a seal any longer. And now the Church waits and prays for her next Supreme Pontiff. All right, thank you for being with us. I'm Tara Mergener. Our top story tonight: sanctity, security, and silence. There is no ordinary time in Rome. Cardinals are preparing for the sacred conclave, where they will be sequestered in the Sistine Chapel, cut off from the outside world to ensure their privacy and protection. Italian police are setting up checkpoints, metal detectors, and anti-drone systems. And EWTN Vatican correspondent Valentina Donato got an up-close look at those measures.
From the river, sky to the ground, increased checks are happening all over the city of Rome ahead of the conclave. And we're here with the Italian police, and they're showing us what some of these checks are like to keep the city safe ahead of this historic moment. Every day, the Italian police survey the Tiber River just across from the Vatican, searching for any anomalies and possible threats. Just a day before the conclave, the officers explain that the checks are increasing, nearly a dozen times a day.
It's extremely important to work on prevention in order to avoid something irreparable from happening. And working on prevention is not always easy, because it requires you to imagine that anything could happen.
While we are on the boat, we see police helicopters patrolling the Vatican and its surroundings by air. Anything unusual is communicated to the Central Police Operation Room. The increased checks that are happening throughout the city involved increased surveillance, metal detector checks in the surrounding colonnades of St. Peter's Square. On May 7th, the day of the conclave, the area around the Vatican will be divided into 3 main surveillance areas, closed by filtering and pre-filtering, a task entrusted to the police. For security reasons, 50,000 people will be allowed on St. Peter's Square, and over 100,000 on Via della Conciliazione, the road leading up to the Basilica. The plan of the police force is to increase agents by the hundreds, 24 hours a day.
Additional strengthening of territorial surveillance services has been planned in all the areas surrounding the Vatican to ensure an even greater presence of the state police and to raise the level of security as well as within the Vatican area itself.
In the Special Events Operations Room, all of the most iconic squares throughout Rome are now heavily surveilled to prevent and intervene if security breaches are made. How long the increased security will last is still unclear. It will depend on how long the conclave will last, who will be elected pope, and at what time. All of these factors will also influence how many people will race to witness the moment of the white smoke and see the new pope for the first time.
We will continue with the ordinary, but we are ready to face the extraordinary. Each day will be lived as an as if the next smoke signal might be the decisive one for the election of the Holy Father.
To preserve not only safety and security on the ground, but to also uphold hope during the Jubilee year is of the utmost importance. The tireless 24-hour mission of not only patrolling for threats, but saving people's lives is the core of what these officers continue to do.
For us, it's a job that we try to do to the best of our ability. For every person we manage to save, it's a moment of great satisfaction, and the gratitude we receive from people is truly wonderful.
In Rome, Valentina Di Donato for EWTN News Nightly.
All right, and from the start of the conclave until its end, the cardinal electors will have no contact with the outside world until a new pope is chosen. Before that, the cardinals are speaking out for a last time. Asi Prensa Vatican correspondent Almudena Martinez Bordeaux was able to speak with one of them before the start of the conclave.
Well, the effects of prayer will become clear once the new Pope is elected, but I know that there are many people praying for us, and I'm grateful for that because it always works. Secondly, since this is my first time, I feel like I'm entering into a very unknown world, and so far my experience has been very positive, meaning a good, cordial atmosphere. It's one of fraternity, and even though we don't know each other, well, I don't know many of the cardinals, there is indeed a sense of trust. And above all, I perceive a sense of great responsibility in what we as cardinals have to do.
Que hay un sentido de una gran responsabilidad en lo que nos toca hacer como cardenales.
And though we know the conclave will ultimately produce the next pope, how it happens is a bit more complicated. EWTN Vatican journalist Benedict Settergren gives us a closer look into the rules and the process of the papal election.
To vote in the conclave, a cardinal must be under the age of 80. That means that at the death of Pope Francis, 135 cardinals out of more than 250 were eligible to take part. 2 cardinals have so far announced they will not be participating for reasons of health, so the conclave will be attended by 133 cardinal electors. Cardinals over the age of 80 have been excluded from voting since 1970. On the appointed day, in this case, the afternoon of May 7th, the cardinal electors will process solemnly from the Pauline Chapel in the Apostolic Palace into the Sistine Chapel. There, each elector will take an oath to observe the procedures and maintain secrecy.
Sic me Deus adjuvet, et haec sancta Dei Evangelia quae manum mea tangunt.
With a famed command, extra omnes, or everyone out, by the papal master of ceremonies, the doors of the Sistine Chapel are closed and only the cardinal electors remain together. As the name suggests from the Latin, Conclave, with a key, the cardinals are ceremonially locked in the chapel, a practice in use since 1274. From the start of the conclave until its end, they have no contact with the outside world until a new pope is chosen. On day 1, the cardinals can cast 1 ballot. On days 2 and 3, they cast 2 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. On day 4, if no successor is chosen after those 9 ballots, the electors break for as long as 1 day for prayer. Then the process begins again and continues with breaks in the voting, should the cardinals remain undecided. After 30 total votes without an election of a new pope, a change is made. The cardinals resume voting, but now they must choose only between the 2 leading candidates, who are barred from voting. However, the rules are firm. There can be no waiving of the requirement that there must be a clear majority of at least 2/3 of the votes of the cardinals for an election to be valid. When a cardinal reaches the 2/3 threshold of votes, 89 for this conclave, the most senior cardinal approaches the winner and asks if he accepts election. If he does, he's next asked by what name he shall be called. From that moment, he exercises full and supreme power over the universal church. As the cardinals discern who will fill the chair of St. Peter, the world eagerly watches the roof of the Sistine Chapel. After the conclusion of voting in the morning and the afternoon, the ballots are burned, and smoke billows out of the chapel installed in the Sistine Chapel, shown here during the last conclave in 2013. Black smoke means no candidate reached a 2/3 majority, and the voting must continue. White smoke means a new pope has been chosen.
Habemus Papam.
The senior cardinal deacon makes the announcement, Habemus Papam, Latin for, we have a pope. The new pontiff is introduced on the loggia of St. Peter's Basilica and greets the world as a new pontificate begins. In Rome, Benedict Settergren, EWTN News Nightly.
And during the conclave, we all know to look for that black or white smoke, but that begs the question, how do they produce the color of that smoke? We asked a chemist.
In recent times, they've actually got pyrotechnic experts in to actually making essentially mini fireworks, if you like, that clearly produce black smoke or white smoke. And the difference is that with the black smoke, they've got a essentially stuff that you often get out in coal tar, stuff called anthracene, and there's a lot of that fuel in the mix, and then they add something that produces that chemically adds oxygen to it to make it burn. White smoke, what they use then is something that that creates a lot of oxygen, gives a lot of oxygen to the reaction, and they use a really clean fuel, basically lactose, it's a type of sugar that you actually get from milk. And when that burns, you get a lot of basically steam produced. Okay, so that produces actually nice white billows of clouds, and then they add in something called rosin, which is basically the resin comes out of pine trees.
Good information there. So here's how tomorrow is going to take shape. The Cardinals will gather at 10 a.m. Rome time, that is 4 a.m. Eastern time, for a special mass for the election of the Roman pontiff. Then at 4:30, the Cardinal electors will pray the Litany of Saints, then enter into procession into the Sistine Chapel. The mass, the prayer service, and the procession will be aired all right here on EWTN. All right, joining us now from St. Peter's Square is Monsignor Roger Landry, who's been with EWTN during our interregnum coverage. Monsignor Landry, thank you so much for joining us. First off, the Cardinals held their final meeting today before the conclave. What can you tell us about it?
So it was their 12th general congregation in which 15 were expected to speak, but 26 ended up speaking, revisiting many of the issues that have come up in the first 11 sessions about continuing the good things Pope Francis has done, as well as fixing some of the things that need to be a little bit better with regard to the relations between the Vatican and individual churches like in the United States, as well as the testimony of the martyrs, which is always making the church stronger, as well as the various issues that need to be confronted financially in the Vatican, etc. And so they tied those loose ends together, and now they're totally focused on what is going to await them tomorrow with the Mass for the election of the Holy Father, and then entering the Sistine to do what the whole church is praying for them to accomplish.
Well, certainly a lot to ponder and a very extensive schedule coming up tomorrow. They also celebrate a specific Mass tomorrow morning for the election of the Pope. Talk to us about some of the particular aspects of that Mass, like what readings will there be, for example?
So this is a Mass that hopefully all 407,000 priests in the world are going to be praying tomorrow, the Mass for the election of a Holy Father. It's in the Roman Missal that every parish has. The readings are going to be 3. The first reading is going to be taken from the prophet Isaiah, which is all about how the Spirit of the Lord was upon the anointed one, who was Jesus, but that the Spirit of the Lord is going to come down on the cardinals, and particularly the next successor of St. Peter. We're going to hear from St. Paul's letter to the Ephesians, which talks about how we build our faith on the Lord as our cornerstone, as well as that we've all got different gifts. And then finally in the Gospel, it's going to be probably the most important passage in the Gospel of St. John, where Jesus first tells us, just as the Father has loved me, so I love you, remain in my love. That's always the task of every disciple, not to mention the successor of St. Peter. And then he'll say, it wasn't you who chose me, but I chose you. And so we're looking for the Pope, whom Jesus in fact has chosen to be his earthly vicar. And so that's the word of God that's going to be broken open tomorrow for all of the cardinals to hear.
Amazing. If we do not have a Pope by Friday, will they continue this vote over the weekend?
Yes, they will. So on Saturday, they would first have a talk by the senior cardinal deacon, who will sort of remind them of all their responsibilities and basically encourage them to get on with it. And there'd be 3 votes that day and 4 votes on Sunday.
Okay, and we also know that throughout the process there will be several votes, as you mentioned. Do we have a rough idea of what time the Cardinals will actually cast their ballots?
we have a rough idea, but it can change from conclave to conclave. This conclave, we have 18 more electors in there. So depending upon the speed with which Cardinal Pietro Parolin runs, how they're walking on up, how they're doing their oaths, it can change a little bit. But we would be expecting here in Rome that if there were a pope elected on the first ballot of the morning or the afternoon, we'd see white smoke about 11 o'clock here or 5 in Washington, D.C. in the morning. And then in the afternoon, that would be the first if there were white smoke. Otherwise, about an hour and 15 minutes later, we'd see white or black smoke here, so about 12:15 or so. And then in the afternoon, around 6 o'clock, we'd have white smoke if there were a pope, and around 7:15, white or black. So that's the approximate time scale, but nobody knows until the first day how efficiently they're going to be running the Sistine Chapel and how quickly they're going to be burning the ballots.
Well, no question at all. All eyes are going to be on Rome, no doubt about it. Monsignor, thank you so much for your insight. We're all holding our breath. All right, another action taken by the Cardinals today in their final meeting before the conclave, an appeal to peace, saying in part, "We the Cardinals of the Holy Roman Church," noting that there has been no progress in advancing the peace processes in Ukraine, the Middle East, and so many other parts of the world, make a heartfelt appeal to all parties involved to reach a permanent ceasefire as soon as possible. As the conclave gets underway, we would like to invite you to watch for the white smoke right here on EWTN. Each day of the conclave, we will be live at these hours to see if we have a new pope. It begins tomorrow evening. We have a lot more still to come on EWTN News Nightly. A meeting of neighbors. The Canadian Prime Minister comes to the White House as tensions mount between both countries. How that meeting went. And the Secretary of Homeland Security goes before lawmakers. And as you might guess, things got heated. We are at the Capitol. President Donald Trump welcomes Canada's new Prime Minister Mark Carney to the White House as both sides square off in an ongoing trade war, including steep tariffs and an uncertain future. Whether a deal can be made remains in question. Added to that, President Trump has also said he wants to make Canada the 51st U.S. state. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen.
Tara, one of the big questions coming into today's meeting is how the two world leaders would get along personally. In front of reporters, I can tell you it was amicable and friendly, but the tariffs remain.
Outside the West Wing, President Donald Trump greets Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney. Then, in the Oval Office, the two leaders sit face to face, President Trump offering this compliment.
Just a few days ago, he won a very big election in Canada. And I think I was probably the greatest thing that happened to him, but I can't take vote credit.
Front and center, trade war tensions, creating economic uncertainty on both sides of the border.
You know, the history of Canada and the U.S. is we're stronger when we work together, and there's many opportunities to work together, and I look forward to, addressing some of those issues that we have, but also finding those areas of mutual cooperation so we can move forward.
Just last week, as Canadians went to the polls, President Trump pushing to make Canada the 51st state. Posted on Truth Social, America can no longer subsidize Canada with the hundreds of billions of dollars a year that we have been spending in the past. It makes no sense unless Canada is a state.
Well, I still believe that, but takes two to tango, right? There are tremendous benefits to the Canadian citizens, tremendously lower taxes, free military, which honestly we give you essentially anyway because we're protecting Canada if you ever had a problem.
It's not for sale, won't be for sale ever, but the opportunity is in the partnership and what we can build together.
Canada is the top export destination for 36 U.S. states and the largest foreign supplier of steel, aluminum, and uranium to the U.S. It has 34 critical minerals and metals that the Pentagon could use for national security.
We make the best military equipment in the world, and Canada buys our military equipment, which we appreciate.
President Trump also announced the U.S. attacks against the Iranian-backed Houthis in Yemen will stop. The president says the Houthis don't want to fight anymore, adding they're going to stop blowing up ships. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
All right, Owen, thank you. Well, members of President Trump's cabinet are on Capitol Hill this week in a series of hearings that starts Congress's 2026 budget process. One of them, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, went before a House Appropriations panel and met some staff resistance from Democrats. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales joins us with the latest. Eric.
Well, good evening, Tara. Yes, the Homeland Security Secretary sent a very strong message to those who are in this country illegally. She said, quote, "You are breaking the law and you will be deported if you don't leave." Secretary Noem defended the Trump administration's priority of getting and keeping the most secure border in American history.
We have obtained near total control with daily encounters now down over 93% since President Trump took office. March saw the lowest number of border encounters in recorded history in the history of the United States of America at just under 7,200.
While Republicans praised her work, Democrats came out firing, accusing the Trump administration of breaking the law when they sent 3 American-born children back to Honduras with their deported mother.
Do you believe that the Constitution grants everyone in our country the right to due process, including non-citizens?
The administration has the authority to.
Ma'am, I'm looking for a yes or no question. Yes or no?
It was the parents' choice to take.
And did ICE
which it is the
follow
policy
through
of the
on
Trump
the policy
administration to keep families together.
The secretary also rejected Democrats' claims that the administration is freezing money for disaster relief that Congress had already appropriated.
The president has indicated he wants to eliminate FEMA as it exists today and to have states have more control over their emergency management response. He wants to empower local governments and support them in how they respond to their people.
Where is the evidence of the failure of FEMA?
Congresswoman, we still have claims open from Hurricane Katrina. We have fire claims that are still unpaid to people who said they were due them 7 to 8 to 10 years old. They have never been paid by FEMA.
During the hearing, the secretary also highlighted changes at the Secret Service.
We have reassessed the Secret Service's needs. We've refocused recruitment away from what the Biden administration was prioritizing with DEI objectives and instead bring people in with experience and with training that align with the agency's zero-fail mission.
Secretary Noem was also asked about the mandatory Real ID deadline for all air travelers, which takes effect tomorrow. You'd have to have one of these Real IDs in order to get on a plane. Well, she testified that those who don't have a Real ID, they will be allowed to fly, but they will undergo extra screening. Tara?
All right, Eric, you're also following the latest in a new report released today about the 2017 Congressional baseball shooting. That nearly killed Catholic Congressman Steve Scalise and left several others injured. What do you know about that?
Well, the report from the House Intelligence Committee found that the FBI, quote, completely mishandled its investigation into the shooting. The 27-page report criticized the FBI because it initially characterized it as the event as a suicide by cop, but admitted years later that it was a domestic terrorism incident. The Republican-led investigation found that the FBI cherry-picked on what to disclose to the public, and Republicans claim that the agency demonstrated a lack of objectivity and was politically biased. Tara?
Eric Rosales, thank you. Today, the Supreme Court allowed the president to implement his ban on transgender people serving in the military. The order was a response to an emergency appeal by the Trump administration, who had implemented the ban in February, but it was later frozen by a federal judge in March. Litigation continues in the 9th District Court and may reach the Supreme Court again. No explanation was provided for the order, although 3 justices dissented. Well, Israel's blockade of the Gaza Strip is entering its 3rd month now. It has banned food, water, and medication from entering that area, and now a handful of leaders are accusing Israel of war crimes. Families are forced to spend hours in line waiting for small portions of rice. Aid groups report a rise in looting incidents as residents try to find food. One report says thousands of trucks with humanitarian aid are lined up at the border waiting to enter. At least 1 child is dead after India fires missiles into a territory controlled by Pakistan. The strikes come amid soaring tensions between the nuclear-armed neighbors following an attack last month by militants in a portion of Kashmir controlled by India. Islamabad denies any involvement. Up next on EWTN News Nightly, drawing concern. The DOJ is investigating a new law which affects priests and confession. The Department of Justice has opened an investigation into a Washington state law which would require priests to break the seal of confession to report abuse cases. The new law provides no exception for the absolute seal of confidentiality and adds members of the clergy to those required to report child abuse or neglect. The DOJ's Civil Rights Division is investigating whether the law violates First Amendment religious protections. The Assistant Attorney General says the measure appears to single out clergy and that the DOJ is taking the matter very seriously. Well, we thank you for watching tonight. Remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, X, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Tara Mergener. Good night and God bless.